Hello everyone, Mike here, and it's been a while since I've done one of these things where I just ramble about something, but decided to get into a very commonly discussed topic. Of course, you know what that is because it's right in the title, but I am talking about the age-old discussion of subs versus dubs. Now, personally, I can see both sides. I can see why people like dubs, I can see why people like subs, but rather than, get into, well, these people like it this way for this reason, instead of making assumptions about people, I decided to go out onto Twitter and Facebook, and I asked people's opinions on which they prefer and why. And I got a couple interesting thoughts on it, many of which are reasons that I have heard and am very familiar with. And I heard a couple of new ones. So before I get into my own personal feelings on the whole subs versus dubs thing, I want to take a look at a couple of the thoughts that I saw from other people. Let's get in here. This one, it really depends. If I'm watching with my family or while doing something else, it's dubs. If I'm watching I think he meant to say more intently and looking for nuance, it's subs. What my 11-year-old daughter does is watch the dub, then the sub, to see if she can pick up on the language. I have done this. I've had cases where I wanted to have it either as ambient noise or, that kind of thing, and then would have it in dub so that I am able to actually, tell what's happening while working on whatever it is I'm working on. I'm also familiar with the whole going through it to try to pick up a little bit of the Japanese language. That is something I hear quite a lot of people who try to use anime as a method of learning Japanese. And I do think it can work for learning some phrases, though in general you're not going to learn the Japanese language just from watching anime. It does not work that way. Although one thing I do say is, a lot of the times if you're trying to memorize phrases or something through anime, turn off the subtitles. Because if you got the subtitles there, you're subconsciously going to be looking at them, and then you're not really learning. The best way you're going to learn it is by listening and being forced to listen because you don't have the subtitles as a cushion. I don't know why this got into a how to learn Japanese through anime discussion, but let's move on to the next one. Dubs. Think about all the artistic work that goes in anime. How many details do you miss with your peripheral vision if you're focusing on reading? This is a very common answer that I get for why people prefer dubs, and completely makes sense. There is some beautiful imagery that you can get in anime, and a lot of times visual gags that you could potentially miss if your eyes are focused down at the bottom of the screen reading the subtitles. Totally get that. I feel subs have the best chance of being good translations, as the only limit is number of words or characters, a la Twitter. With dubs, translations are further limited to words and sentences that fit the original mouth movements. This has to be less accurate, which is my priority. And actually, this thought was brought up a second time by someone else. Let me see. Assuming the translation interpretation quality is comparable, I will take subtitles over dubs for any filmed media I watch, not originally recorded in a language I understand. Dubbing is often strained as people want to force it to lip sync, which can change accuracy and even meaning if there are significant structural and phonetic differences between the languages. Subtitles can be more flexible, and lip syncing is not an issue, and we can get the emotional inflection independent of a different grammatical structure. It's more work on the part of the viewer, but I find it gives a more natural and accurate representation of the creator's intent. Now, these two thoughts were actually something I hadn't really given any thought to, but it's true that when you are dubbing it, a lot of times you have to worry about matching the mouth flaps. And that's true. That potentially can cause changes in translation. Now, admittedly, then there are shows like Ghost Stories where they straight up intentionally changed the dialogue so it didn't matter if it didn't match the lip flaps. But I can get this. I definitely see what you're saying there, even though, again, this is something that I had not heard before. So this was very interesting to hear. I think for me, it's due to an exposure line. Up until I started watching anime, until the late 90s, I was fine with dubs. But until I gave up the anime Ghost in the mid-2000s and subversions became more available, that was my preferred method. I'll still stand by Golden Boy being an excellent dub, and I'll always prefer the dub for Fist of the North Star movie for its awesomely dumb lines. Golden Boy is a show that I really didn't watch a lot of. It was actually one of the early animes for me, and I actually have never heard the subtitled version of this. I don't know what the original dialogue sounds like. I only got through the first couple episodes because I am the type who has no real issue with some fan service in an anime, but Golden Boy is one of those really lewd shows that really didn't do much for me, especially just getting into anime. It made me a little uncomfortable. I don't know if it would make me as uncomfortable now because I've been watching anime for a much longer period of time. But yeah, let's see here. And finally, honestly, I love both. I think people should enjoy the way that makes them happy and let others do the same. I think people should be kind and just bond over the love of anime. Very diplomatic answer, but given that my feeling is going to be very similar to that, I can't really argue it. Another one that I have noticed as a reason that people prefer dubs that was not really brought up here is there are some people that just can't do subtitles. Like, for example, people who maybe have a reading issue, such as dyslexia. They're not going to be able to read subtitles. And some people just don't read fast and thus can't keep up with subtitles. Completely understandable reasons. But a lot, like was brought up a little earlier, I can see the other side as well. My neighbors are making noise. I can understand in the Japanese, you're going to get emotion that you're not always going to get in the English. Now, it's a lot better now, but you look at older anime, the dubs were terrible. And in a lot of those, you didn't have a choice. There was no way to get access to the original Japanese. But, so I've rambled enough about other people's thoughts on it. Let me give my own. For me, it varies. Some anime I prefer subtitled, some I prefer dubbed. There's some that I can take either or. Actually, the majority of anime for me is either or. I can watch it subtitled, I can watch it dubbed. A good example is My Hero Academia. I think of that one because I've seen the entire series available right now in the original Japanese and recently got a hold of the first season DVD, so I've been watching the English dub. And I enjoy both. I can watch either or and get the same enjoyment out of it. And there are some that I can watch either version and get a completely different experience. A good example of that would be like Sergeant Frog. They changed a lot of the jokes in that anime when they brought it over into the English dub, and it makes for a really funny experience watching it in English, but at the same time there are a lot of funny jokes in the original Japanese, so I'm able to enjoy it both ways. But there are some that I specifically prefer one way or the other. As far as ones that I specifically prefer the dub, first one that pops to my mind, Dragon Ball Z. I am a big fan of the actresses that play Goku and Krillin in the Japanese. In other stuff. Specifically, the actress that plays Krillin is also the voice of Luffy on One Piece, and she is excellent in that. And likewise, the actress that plays Goku is wonderful in so many other projects. But when those characters become adults and still sound like little kids, it just doesn't work for me. Now, of course, this isn't to say if other people like the Japanese dub of Dragon Ball Z, they're wrong. By no means. I just personally prefer that Goku and Krillin sound like adults when they become adults. And that just bugs me a little bit. As far as ones that I specifically prefer the Japanese, that would be mostly older shows. Stuff from like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, when dubbing was not good. Just to throw a good example there. Love Hina was one of the first anime I ever saw, and initially I watched it dubbed and didn't even give a second thought. But in hindsight, watching it dubbed nowadays, it's not very good. The only, really good performance I saw in that, I would say would have come from Wendy Lee, who is just an awesome voice actress. But other than her, the English dub of Love Hina is not very good. And another example are anime with songs. Specifically, if the songs are not dubbed as well. A couple examples of this: Wandaba Style, older anime. The English dub, very good, but the songs are still in the original Japanese. Not for lack of wanting, they would have loved to have dubbed it over, but they didn't have that option. But the voices just sound so different when they suddenly switch to Japanese singing. And another one that has that same problem is Zombieland Saga, or I should say did have that same problem, is Zombieland Saga. Because initially the English dub of that also had the songs not dubbed. And this one was even worse because specifically Sakura, I felt her English voice was extremely different from her Japanese voice. Actually, I think they made the character sound too old in the English dub. Very well acted, but the character's supposed to be like in early high school, and she sounded like she was in her mid to late 20s. I didn't care for that, but yet when she then starts singing in this very young Japanese voice, it just really threw me off. Now, that's not as much a problem now because they have dubbed the songs over. I haven't seen that version yet. I actually want to get my hands on it, but that one, the English dub, bugs me just a bit, specifically when they do the songs. But yeah, in general, I can usually give or take either or. Regardless, nobody's wrong. I mean, really, I don't even understand why there has to be a right or wrong. Everyone has their own way that they enjoy anime. And the thing is, at the end of the day, we're all still fans of anime. So whether you like dub, whether you like subtitles, enjoy it. And don't tell people that they're wrong for not liking it the same way you do. If you want to like it a certain way, have at it. Let everybody else like it the way they do. Well, that's all I've got on this one. So, until next time.